Okay, so picture this. My sister shows up unannounced. My parents are already on edge, and suddenly I'm stuck in the middle of this insane family drama. It's tense, chaotic, and honestly, I wasn't sure I'd make it through the morning without losing it. And here's the kicker: what happens next completely flips the script. You won't see it coming. Oh, and before we dive in, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. Okay, the migraine had started creeping in about an hour ago. That familiar dull throb behind my left eye. And I knew what it meant. A full-blown explosion of pain was just around the corner. I'd taken my medication, but I also knew I was on borrowed time. I stared at the blinking cursor on the audio file in front of me, and, okay, yeah, it was almost mocking me. Stat surgical report. Dr. Al-Jamal. Urgent. 40 minutes of fast-talking post-op notes. Every second critical. Every word needing perfect transcription. I couldn't afford a single mistake. Half my monthly bills depended on this one file. And at 42, I'd carved out a fragile freelance career that demanded absolute silence, total focus, and zero interruptions. All from this little office I had fought so hard to claim as my own sanctuary. And yet, every muscle in my body was tense, my head pounding, my focus fraying at the edges. Then I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway. I didn't even have to look up to know. It was Laura, my younger sister. And just like that, my day teetered on the edge of disaster. I glanced at the clock, 10:15 on a Tuesday. My stomach sank. Her beat-up sedan was out there, the one I'd co-signed for. And there they were, my nephew and niece, Liam and Sophie, looking small and confused from the back seat. I felt that familiar squeeze in my chest, a rush of love for them, mixed with a sinking dread for the chaos their mother would inevitably unleash. Because this was Laura's script. Texts announcing her arrival, dropping the kids off uninvited, half-baked excuses about work or meetings she didn't actually have, and then disappearing again, leaving me to juggle children who were energetic, unruly, and exhausting, with a transcription that literally could not be late. And today was different. Today, my migraine wasn't just a nuisance, it was a vice tightening around my skull. The deadline wasn't flexible, and, well, I'd finally reached my limit. I could feel it in every nerve, every pulse behind my eye. As her footsteps neared the porch, I didn't move. Instead, I pressed the lock icon on my phone. The deadbolt thunked, the doorbell camera chimed, and there she was, face pressed to the lens, looking annoyed. "Thea, open up. It's freezing," she said. I leaned toward the intercom, trying to keep my voice calmer than I felt. "Hi, Laura, I can't today." The micro-expression on her face, shock, disbelief, was almost satisfying. She didn't compute the word no. "What? What do you mean?" "Open the door," I explained, firm but measured, that I had a critical work deadline. Her disbelief morphed into rage, her voice shrill, slamming her hand against the door. I felt my heart hammer, my migraine spiking, but I stood my ground. "Go home, Laura, or find other care. I am not opening the door." Her face went pale with fury. She grabbed the kids, slammed the car door, and peeled out, leaving a storm of gravel and adrenaline behind her. I sank into my office chair, migraine now a full-blown explosion of white-hot pain. The silence of the house was deafening. Every heartbeat a drum in my skull. I could barely move, could barely hold the mouse. But the cold, hard clarity of anger and righteous indignation replaced the guilt I was used to feeling. I remembered past incidents, the hour that turned into 6, the internet crash during a transcription test, the lost contracts, the money she never repaid, and, most importantly, the children, used as emotional battering rams in her tirades. I pulled up the security system, cameras installed, not for burglars, but for moments like this. Moments when I needed proof, front door, driveway, back porch, everything recorded in crystal clear audio and HD video. I downloaded the files, backed them up, and felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. The migraine was still there, yes, pounding, but something else had replaced the fear focus, purpose, the knowledge that I had. Finally, a record of the truth. I leaned back, swallowed 2 more painkillers, and returned to my audio file. The stat report waited. The surgeon's voice, fast and precise, filled my headphones, and despite the migraine, despite the chaos of the morning, I transcribed with careful speed. The tension built, but it was different now, controlled, purposeful. My sanctuary was intact. My work would not be sabotaged today. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't just surviving another Laura-induced storm. I was preparing to fight back, armed with clarity, patience, and the truth recorded in cold, hard digital files. I watched through the blinds as Laura got out of her beat-up sedan. Her movements rushed, agitated, like the world was somehow conspiring against her. Behind her, Liam and Sophie, 9 and 6, trailed along, tiny heads bobbing as they tried to keep up. My chest twisted in that familiar, complicated squeeze love for them and dread for what their mother would unleash. The script was familiar, painfully so. A text would pop up first. I'm here. Then she would march right in, dropping their backpacks on my immaculate floor, exhaling excuses about agents, meetings, collaborations, all of it fabricated. And just like that, my entire morning, my migraine, my work, my focus, all of it would hang by a thread. But today was different. Today, the throbbing behind my left eye was more than a warning. It was a vice. Today, the deadline was unyielding. Today, I had finally reached the point where enough was enough. As I heard the familiar, confident footsteps on my porch, I didn't move. I didn't get up. I didn't even consider it. Instead, I pressed the lock icon on my phone. Thunk. Deadbolt engaged. My doorbell camera chimed, and her face appeared on the screen. Annoyance written in every line. Thea, open up. It's freezing, she said. I leaned toward the intercom on my desk, careful to keep my voice calmer than I felt. Hi, Laura. I can't today. She froze, microbladed eyebrows shooting up in disbelief. What? What are you talking about? Open the door. My voice was steady, measured, though my stomach churned. I can't. I have a critical work deadline. Like I told you last night, you have to leave. You need to find someone else to watch the kids. For a long, horrifying second, she stared, blank disbelief, and then her expression cracked. The mask fell. Are you kidding me? She shrieked, voice high, sharp, almost manic. She slammed her fist against the door. Thea, don't be like this. I don't have time for your moods. Open this door right now. I am not having a mood. Laura, I said, calm but dangerous, feeling every nerve in my body coil. I am working. I am on a deadline that pays my mortgage. You can't just drop them here. I told you that. She screamed, loud, full force, an unhinged crescendo. It's an emergency. My meeting. It's with a huge brand. This could be my big break, Thea. And you're trying to ruin it. You're so selfish. You just sitting there all day doing nothing. I am not doing nothing. I snapped. More than I wanted to. More than I thought I could. And you know I am. You do this every single time. You have to find someone else. There is no one else. You can't just assume I'm here for your convenience. She delivered a sharp, open-palmed slap to the front door. Wood shuddered. I clenched my teeth. You're there. Aunt, it's your job. What is wrong with you? You're being heartless. You're going to make me lose this job. Sophie had started to cry. My heart sank. Every instinct screamed to open the door, to apologize, to smooth things over. That's what I had always done. That's who I was. Thea, the responsible one, the stable one, the old soul, the one always cleaning up her sister's mess. But if I caved now, I knew I would cave forever. So I stayed still, and my words came steady. Go home, Laura, or find other care. I am not opening the door. Her face went pale, rage etched into every feature. She pointed a shaking finger at the camera. You will regret this, she whispered, venom lacing the syllables. Then she grabbed a stunned Liam by the wrist, snatched up a crying Sophie, and stormed back to her car. Gravel spat up as her tires tore out of the driveway. My chest heaved, migraine exploding, betrayal cutting sharper than any physical pain. I sank into my office chair, hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the mouse. The house was silent now, but the silence was deafening, amplifying the phantom ringing of her shrieks in my ears. Adrenaline temporarily eclipsed the pain, but soon the migraine, the rage, and the guilt formed a toxic cocktail that threatened to overwhelm me. My first impulse was to chase her, to call, to apologize, to say, it's fine, I can handle it. But no, not this time. Not today. Today. I remembered why I had finally built the sanctuary of my office, why I had fought for this space, this focus, this career, today. The sight of Sophie's trembling mouth and Liam's confused eyes hardened my resolve. This was no longer just about me. It was about them. I thought back to the last time she pulled this stunt, just 3 weeks ago. 1 hour turned into 6, and it cost me a critical test with a neurology clinic that could have boosted my income massively. I had confronted her, only to be laughed at. Promises of repayment evaporating into thin air. Every bill, every favor, every time I had bailed her out, still unpaid. And now, watching her speed away with her kids, unbuckled, ignoring basic safety, I realized I wasn't just angry for myself. I was furious for the children, for the innocents she manipulated as a weapon. I opened the security monitor on my desk, the one I'd installed a year ago after she broke my work laptop in the shower. 4 camera feeds, all recording in high definition. Front door, driveway, back porch, living room, evidence of every word, every movement, every deceit. I tapped a few keys, downloaded the files, and backed them up to an encrypted hard drive. A strange, cold calm settled over me. The guilt, the fear they had no purchase here anymore. Laura, in her rage, always forgot one crucial fact. This house had eyes and ears. I was no longer the passive observer, the silent participant in her destruction. I was now curator of consequences, and the migraine pounding in my skull became secondary to the clarity of purpose surging through me. I leaned back in my chair, pressing the ice against my temple, staring at the blinking cursor of the stat surgical file, waiting for transcription. And I realized the morning's chaos, the screaming, the manipulation, the betrayal, it had only sharpened my focus. I wasn't just surviving Laura's storm today. I was preparing to face it head on. Armed not just with my work, but with proof, with resolve, and finally, with myself. Sitting there in the quiet of my office, migraine still thudding behind my eyes, I let my mind wander back through the years. It wasn't just today, was it? It was decades of being the responsible one, the one who held the line while Laura drifted through life untethered. The sacrifices I'd made weren't recognized, they were expected. My parents had built a system around her chaos and my stability, and they applauded her for breathing and me for surviving. I remembered the countless late nights driving her to the hospital when boyfriends failed, scraping together security deposits for apartments she couldn't afford, buying cribs and hosting baby showers for children whose fathers had vanished without a trace. I'd been the safety net, the unpaid helper, the one whose work and time were invisible because, well, I worked from home. My home, apparently. Wasn't mine. It was a daycare, an ATM, a repair shop, and the children I adored them, truly. Liam and Sophie had been the only innocent parties in this ongoing chaos. But I realized, bitterly, that my love had become a weapon in Laura's hands. Leverage she used against me without a second thought. And the accidents, the emergencies, the lies they weren't new. Just last month, she had promised she'd be gone in an hour, but 6 hours later, I'd been scrambling through a live transcription test for a neurology clinic, failing it because Liam had been playing with the modem, thousands of dollars lost, and she had laughed it off. "Don't be so dramatic. Thea, I'll pay you back." She never did. And I had paid every single time. My anger rose, sharp and cold, but beneath it was the understanding that this wasn't just about her, it was about the way the entire family system had enabled this pattern, reinforced it, and made me feel guilty for wanting boundaries. That was the lesson. That was the hard truth. I looked at the small monitor in the corner of my desk, the 4 little feeds of my security system, front door, driveway, back porch, living room. It had felt extreme when I first installed it paranoid. Even, after all, why would I need cameras to watch my own family? But then I remembered the laptop, the one she'd borrowed while I was in the shower and promptly dropped, shattering the screen. She lied about it. Of course. And my parents, predictably, had taken her side. The damage was done. But I realized, almost with a perverse kind of satisfaction, that this system wasn't just for peace of mind anymore. It was my arsenal, my way of reclaiming some control. I tapped a few keys, opening the cloud storage, and there it was. Driveway 10:15 a.m., front door 10:16 a.m. Each moment captured in crisp high definition. The audio was just as clear, her shrill, entitled voice preserved forever, every accusation, every falsehood, every venomous whisper. I downloaded the files, saved them to my desktop, then backed them up to a separate, encrypted hard drive. The guilt I had carried for years. The constant self-questioning about whether I was overreacting, whether I was being too rigid or too harsh, it began to ebb, replaced by clarity. I realized the truth Laura had always assumed she could manipulate not just me, but everyone around her, that my love and my responsibility were hers to exploit, and I wasn't going to let that happen today. My sanctuary, my work, my home, my peace, it was mine. And for the first time, I felt that I wasn't just protecting myself, I was protecting the children too. Watching them grow up in chaos and manipulation wasn't acceptable. Not if I could do anything to prevent it. I leaned back in my chair, taking a slow, deliberate breath. I let myself feel the anger, yes, but also the satisfaction of planning, of strategizing. I had the evidence, I had the control, and I had the clarity that this confrontation was no longer just emotional, it was rational. This was about documenting truth, preserving reality against the distortions and gaslighting that had been normalized in our family. And yet, despite the cold clarity, I couldn't help the small pang of worry. What if they reacted badly to seeing themselves on camera? What if the situation escalated, but even that fear was tempered by a deep sense of preparation? I wasn't walking in blind. I had the full picture captured in perfect detail. I wasn't a victim here, not anymore. And that realization, that sense of empowerment, dulled the migraine just a touch. The pain was still there, yes, but it was secondary now, a background hum beneath the surge of focus and resolve. I had set boundaries before, but they had been ignored or overridden, justified by family loyalty or manipulated guilt. Today, it was different. Today, I had tools that made the truth indisputable, tools that allowed me to assert my autonomy without bending or collapsing under the familiar weight of expectation. I tapped the keys again, making sure the files were safe across multiple storage platforms. Redundancy was necessary. This wasn't just precaution, this was strategy. And the realization struck me, cold and hard for the first time in decades. I wasn't just planning a defense, I was preparing an offense. Not in the sense of vengeance, but in the sense of protection and accountability. The system I had built, the sanctuary I had defended, the work I had preserved, it all came together to give me the leverage I had never had before. And I understood then that this moment, this morning, was a turning point. The one-sided sacrifices, the constant self-effacement, the invisible labor, the emotional manipulation, it was ending. And it wasn't ending with excuses or apologies or another cycle of guilt. It was ending with proof, with clarity, and with the knowledge that I could finally stand firm without fear. My mind settled on the files again, replaying the confrontation in slow motion, her shrill voice, my calm response, the children caught in the middle, the fleeing car. Each second was preserved, immutable, undeniable, and in that moment, a strange, almost serene sense of calm replaced the chaos. I was angry, yes, but also rational, and strangely, almost grateful. Grateful for the clarity. Grateful for the technology that had saved me from another wave of lies and gaslighting. Grateful for the first real sense of agency I had felt in years. This wasn't just about today. It was about reclaiming my life, my work, and my sanity from a pattern that had spanned decades. And as I sat back, hands trembling slightly from the migraine and the adrenaline, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: control. I wasn't just surviving. I was watching. I was documenting. I was finally prepared to respond on my own terms. I heard the car door slam outside and my stomach sank. It wasn't just a phone call. They had driven the hour to confront me. I watched through the security monitor as my father's dark blue SUV pulled up, Margaret and Robert flanking each other, faces taut with righteous concern. Then the doorbell rang, not a polite ding-dong, but a long, impatient press, followed by pounding on the door. Robert's fists, heavy and insistent. "Thea, open this door. We know you're in there." I felt my legs go like lead as I walked to the office, the migraine throbbing behind my eyes, and activated the intercom. My mother's pale, pinched face appeared on the screen. "Don't you? What do you want?" "Thea, this has gone far enough. Let us in. We need to talk about what you did to your sister." My voice shook slightly, though I forced it steady. "I didn't do anything to her. I'm working. I couldn't watch the kids. She had a tantrum. She's distraught." Her hands fluttered to her chest, overdramatic, pure theater. Tears, sighs, accusation, the same old act I'd watched for decades. Then my father's face appeared, stern and looming. "Thea, your sister is in a fragile state. You need to apologize. You need to make this right. You're tearing this family apart." I felt the familiar wave of frustration, the hot flush of past injustices threatening to swallow me. But not today. Not now. I took a deep breath, inhaled the migraine, exhaled my resolve. I am not calling anyone. I will not apologize for a lie, and I am not letting you in to bully me or take her side. You've never, not once, taken my side. There was a flicker of disbelief on their faces. I could see them processing, trying to recalibrate. "Side," my mother shrieked. "This isn't about sides. It's about family. Laura is struggling, and you, with your nice house and quiet life, You can't even find it in your heart to help her for a few hours. My nice house, my quiet life, they're paid for by the work I am doing right now. I said, anger and clarity sharpening my words. I am not here for your convenience. I am not here to be your free daycare. I am working, and I won't compromise that. I could see my father's jaw tighten, the power dynamic shifting ever so slightly. And then, almost casually, a thought struck me. Time for the first reveal. I turned back to my computer, opened my email, and attached the 2 video files. The doorbell footage, 10:16 a.m., and the driveway footage, 10:18 a.m. I hit send to my private email safe. Backed up, undeniable. Their panic hadn't arrived yet, but I could feel it building. I turned back to the intercom, voice calm, deliberate. I have a video of the entire conversation from the moment she pulled up to the moment she drove away. I let it hang in the air, letting the words do their work, their expressions, thoughts, mouths opening, closing, disbelief mixing with confusion. What my mother whispered, I pressed on. I have a security camera. It records audio and video. I have the entire encounter saved. Her screaming, her lies about the meeting, the venomous whispers, and finally, the driveway footage showing her driving away with the children, safe in her car. Their eyes flicked between me, the screen, the words, trying to reconcile this evidence with their internal narrative. But they had been conditioned to filter reality through Laura's chaos, and now, confronted with undeniable proof, their minds were scrambling. You taped your own sister. What in the world is wrong with you? Thea, my father barked. I shook my head slowly, calm and collected. It's a security camera. Dad, visible, legal, and not a secret. The difference is I documented the truth, not just for me, but for clarity and safety. You're trying to blackmail her, claim it's entrapment, but it's reality. And reality isn't negotiable. My mother's voice gained strength, a final gasp of defense. You're holding this over her head. This is worse. So much worse. I let it settle over them, the weight of evidence and calm precision in my voice pressing against decades of manipulation. I am not holding it over anyone. I said, it's the truth, the words, the actions, the decisions, all of it recorded. I am not the problem here. You are enabling her. There was a brief silence. Pregnant, heavy, I could see the tension twist in their faces. They wanted compliance, submission, guilt, but this time, I wasn't giving it. I wasn't the scared, passive daughter. I wasn't negotiating morality for the sake of temporary peace. I was in control. My hand hovered over the intercom, voice steady, measured. Get off my property. I will call the police if you do not leave immediately. I cut the feed. On the monitor, they stood, stunned, mouths open, faces contorted in disbelief. My father's urge to strike, to break through, was visible, but my mother restrained him, tentative, unsure. Finally, they retreated, storming back to the SUV and leaving. I sat back, legs shaking, migraine ebbing and flowing, heart hammering not from fear, but from the sheer exertion of standing my ground. They had tried to gaslight, to manipulate, to weaponize guilt and family loyalty, and yet here I was, calm, evidence-backed, and unyielding. The psychological stakes were immense, years of subtle erosion, passive-aggressive conditioning, and one-sided sacrifice culminated in this precise moment. And I had the leverage not to punish, but to preserve truth, to reclaim agency. For decades, I had been defined by their narrative. Today, I had redefined it on my own terms. The slow reveal of the security footage wasn't just proof, it was liberation. And as the silence settled, heavy, almost suffocating in its intensity, I realized that this confrontation, this meticulous presentation of truth, had shifted everything. I had one clarity. I had one control. I had confronted the gaslighting directly, exposing not just Laura saw, but the enablers, the architects of the pattern to the reality they had been distorting. And for the first time, I could sit back, migraine throbbing but mind sharp, and truly feel the power of calm. Calculated truth against years of familial chaos. The polite but firm knock at the front door made my blood run cold. I looked at the doorbell camera and froze. A police officer, tall, professional, wearing the crisp dark blue uniform, was standing on my porch. My chest tightened, migraine throbbing in the background, but a white-hot clarity surged through me. This was Laura's move, the ultimate escalation. She had weaponized the system against me, calling in a wellness check to make me look unstable. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my shirt, and unlatched the deadbolt. "Ma'am, are you Thea?" he asked. Voice measured, hand near his belt. "Yes, officer, I'm Thea. How can I help you?" My voice stayed calm, even as my heart pounded. He explained the situation, a call from Laura and my parents, concerns about my well-being, possible danger to myself, and that children were present. Every word felt like a calculated trap, designed to ensnare me in guilt and panic, but I didn't flinch. "Officer, I am perfectly fine," I said, voice steady. "I am not a danger to myself. There are no children here. I am in the middle of my workday." He peered past me into the quiet, tidy living room, skeptical but alert. "They said you locked them out and were screaming." He continued, "Would you mind if I came in to verify everything is all right?" I stepped aside, letting him enter. He moved with cautious professionalism, scanning the room. "Yes, please," I said, motioning toward my office. "I am the one being harassed. My sister. My parents, they have created a disturbance today. My sister filed a false report, and I have proof." His eyebrow rose. Intrigued, he followed me to my desk. I brought up the security footage on the main monitor. "I have a security system. Officer, it records audio and video." I clicked play. The doorbell footage from 10:16 a.m. filled the screen. There she was. Laura, face pressed against the camera, her voice immediately escalating. "Thea, open up. It's freezing." I leaned forward, microphone capturing every word. "Hi, Laura. I can't today," I said calmly. Though my stomach was tight, her face froze, disbelief spreading across her features. "Are you kidding me? Open this door right now," she screamed, voice sharp and high-pitched. I calmly explained my work obligations and the impossibility of caring for the kids at that moment. He watched silently, processing every movement, every tone. "She lied about her big break," I added. "She called me selfish and heartless. She threatened me." And then I clicked the driveway footage. 10:18 a.m. The screen showed her speeding away with Liam and Sophie safely in the back seat. Not a single second in my care. The officer's neutral, professional expression shifted subtly. Skepticism giving way to comprehension. He was seeing the truth. Then, almost on cue, the familiar sound of car doors slamming outside drew my attention. I looked at the monitor again. Laura's sedan, my father's SUV. They had followed the police, rushing up the walkway, faces masked in righteous concern. Clearly, they intended to arrive as the rescuing family. "Officer, thank God," my mother cried, rushing toward him. "Is she all right?" We were so worried. Laura pointed at me, finger shaking. "She's crazy. She locked us all out. She's unstable. I told you." The officer raised a hand. Instant effect. All three froze mid-step. Their narrative interrupted. "Ma'am," he said, voice hard and deliberate, addressing Laura directly. "I have just reviewed security footage of your encounter this morning." Her face went ghostly white. My parents looked confused, trying to reconcile the footage with their expectations. "Footage?" my father asked, voice faltering. "That's right," the officer continued, eyes locked on Laura. I saw the entire event. I heard you screaming at your sister. I heard her calmly tell you she was working. I heard you lie about your big break. And I then saw you drive away with the children. At no point were they in danger. At no point was your sister unstable. She was calm, measured, and safe. You, however, created the disturbance, and then you called in a false report claiming child endangerment and a mental health crisis, tying up police resources. Shock, disbelief, and the creeping realization of defeat spread across their faces. The expressions of triumph, concern, and moral superiority evaporated in an instant. Laura sputtered, words catching in her throat, but she taped me. That's illegal. She's sick, ma'am, the officer said, voice low and precise. Your sister has a visible security camera on her front door. That is perfectly legal. What is not legal is filing a false police report. Wasting police resources is a serious offense. You have disrupted law enforcement unnecessarily. He stepped toward them, a professional gravity pressing them back. I have everything I need. Leave this property immediately. You will not contact your sister again. If I get one more call to this address from any of you, I will not be as understanding. Do you understand me? My mother's eyes widened, nodding rapidly. My father stared at the floor, defeated. Laura's last gasp, a whisper of fury and disbelief, barely audible. You did this. You tore this family apart. No, Laura, I said, voice firm and clear, echoing in the sudden silence. You did. You lied. And I just told the truth. Get out of my house. The officers stayed until all three were in their cars. Watching as they drove away, my parents still stunned, Laura peeling out just as she had before. Finally, he turned to me, expression softening. Ma'am, I am truly sorry for all of that. That was a lot. You have a right to work and a right to peace in your own home. He handed me a small card with a case number. If they contact you again, call us and reference this file. We will take it seriously. I nodded, feeling my knees weaken for the first time, the migraine and adrenaline finally settling. He gave me a polite nod and left, the front door closing behind him with a quiet finality. The house, now, was profoundly silent. Not threatening, not oppressive, but vast and open, a sanctuary reclaimed. I went back to my desk, feeling empty yet relieved, the tension finally draining. I had confronted the lies, the manipulation, and the chaos. I had emerged calm, precise, and vindicated. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was the sound of peace, of truth prevailing, of control finally returned. And for the first time in decades, I could sit back, hands trembling slightly from stress and migraine, and feel the extraordinary weight of absolute clarity. I had faced the storm, guided it with evidence, and the storm had dispersed, leaving me in control of my own life, my own home, and my own narrative. The house was finally quiet, not the tense, heavy silence that makes every creak sound like an accusation, but a real, open quiet that stretched through every room. I walked through the halls, pausing to touch the banister, the walls, even the doorknobs, as if grounding myself in the reality that I had taken this space back. The sense of tension that had clung to me for decades, the constant low-level anxiety that came from knowing I could be summoned at any moment to clean up someone else's mess, had dissipated, leaving behind a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I knew deep down that the storm wasn't over forever. My family had been trained to escalate, to manipulate, to spin narratives in ways that could be suffocating. But for now, the immediate danger was gone. The videos, the evidence, and the recent confrontation had created a buffer, a boundary that was no longer negotiable. I could finally breathe. I started by taking care of the practical things. My inbox was full, but I wasn't overwhelmed. I opened the neurology clinic's test files that I had failed weeks ago, the ones that had slipped through my fingers because of previous chaos. With the house quiet, my hands no longer trembling, my mind focused without interruption, I tackled the transcription work with precision. Each keystroke was deliberate, each sentence carefully checked for accuracy. The hours flew by, but they didn't feel burdensome. There was a rhythm, a flow, a sense of productivity I had not been able to access when under the constant weight of familial expectation. When I finally sent the completed files with 100% accuracy, I allowed myself a small, quiet celebration. A deep breath, a stretch, a small smile to myself. I had regained control, not just over my work, but over my life. I checked my phone, no new texts, no frantic calls, no manipulative inquiries. I went through my contacts methodically, blocking Laura's number, my mother's, and my father's. The act felt almost ceremonious, a final severing of the chains that had held me hostage emotionally for so long. I knew that blocking numbers wasn't cruelty, it was preservation. It was the first real act of self-care I had allowed myself in decades. The first true declaration that my time, my energy, and my home belonged to me. And as I did it, a calm settled over me, the migraine that had haunted me for years fading into a dull memory rather than a constant companion. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet persisted. At first, it felt strange, almost alarming. My body would tense at the absence of chaos, my mind scanning for the next interruption that never came. But slowly, the stillness became normal and then comforting. I noticed that my sleep improved. I no longer woke up in the middle of the night with a tight jaw and a racing heart. My migraines, once constant and punishing, became less frequent, less severe. I found myself walking in the early morning sunlight, the cool air on my face a reminder that I was finally living for myself, not in service of someone else's drama. I resumed work with a renewed sense of confidence. The neurology clinic that I had failed the test for due to past interruptions had another opening, and this time, with the house peaceful and my focus undisturbed, I passed their new test perfectly. My income increased, my stress decreased, and for the first time, I felt that my career wasn't being held hostage by family obligations that were never mine to begin with. I organized my office, filed away old paperwork, and reestablished a workflow that was entirely mine. Each completed task, each successful project, reinforced a sense of autonomy that I had only dreamed of for decades. About a month later, a letter arrived, handwritten, from my mother. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if the words would bring relief or reignite old anger. But as I read, the familiar cadence of justification, excuses, and "you must understand" clauses unfolded, and then, buried in the third paragraph, were the words I had waited decades to hear. We watched the videos. We didn't know. We see now. We are so sorry. Thea, we failed you. I put the letter down, feeling a complex mixture of relief and detachment. This wasn't a resolution, not entirely. Healing would not come on anyone else's timeline. It would come on mine, in my own terms. And that understanding brought a quiet, steady power. I didn't call, I didn't reach out. I allowed the words to exist without needing validation, without surrendering the control I had fought so hard to reclaim. Life continued in this new pattern. I worked, I read, I took long walks. My home, once a staging ground for chaos, was now a sanctuary. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, rebuilding a network of support that had been eroded by decades of familial pressure and guilt. I discovered hobbies, small pleasures, and routines that reminded me I was entitled to joy and peace simply because I existed, not because I had earned it through service to others. And while Laura continued her life, now facing real-world responsibilities without the safety net I had once provided, Her anger was a distant echo. It had no power over me anymore. I had taken back the narrative, taken back my time, my space, my health. I revisited the video files periodically, not to relive anger or resentment, but to remind myself of what I had accomplished, the proof of my integrity, the evidence of my clarity, the confirmation that I had acted rightly even when the world, or at least my family, had not understood. These digital records became more than files. They were symbols of autonomy, shields against manipulation, and a record of truth that I no longer had to negotiate or defend in the abstract. I could look at them and know unequivocally that I had acted with patience, precision, and moral clarity. The months passed, quiet and measured, my migraines, no longer amplified by constant stress, continued to recede. My sleep was uninterrupted, my mind felt sharper, my decisions more deliberate. I had established boundaries, enforced them consistently, and experienced the profound relief of a life uninterrupted by entitlement masquerading as family duty. Each day, I woke to the silence, the order, and the respect for my space. And each evening, I allowed myself to reflect on the progress, on the freedom I had fought so hard to reclaim. Then, occasionally, reminders arrived: a missed call from a blocked number, a social media post from Laura, but I met them with a calm detachment. I was no longer reactive, no longer ensnared. The anger and guilt that had once driven me were replaced by quiet resolve and a measured awareness that I had reclaimed the life that was mine all along. I had confronted decades of manipulation and won not with confrontation alone, but with careful documentation, calm strategy, and unwavering commitment to boundaries. The vindication I felt was quiet, understated, but profound, not in a triumphant theatrical sense, but in the deep, stabilizing knowledge that I had acted with integrity, protected the innocent, and reclaimed control of my own life. It was a relief that washed over me slowly, like the first warm sun after a long winter. And in that relief, in that quiet, I found a sense of peace I had never truly known before. A life unencumbered by manipulation, grounded in reality and truth, and guided by my own choices. For the first time, I could say, truly and without hesitation, this is my life, my home, my peace, and I will not surrender it again. And there it is, the chaos, the confrontation, and finally, the quiet that follows when you take control of your own life. Thea reclaimed her peace, her work, and her home, proving that boundaries and truth matter. It's a reminder that sometimes standing firm is the bravest thing you can do. If this story made you think, or maybe gave you a bit of hope, go ahead and hit like and subscribe to catch more stories that make you pause and reflect.